Power BI deployment pipelines are easily one of my favorite features. One click and your report moves from dev to QA to production. That sounds perfect, right? Yeah, except the real world loves to mess up a perfect plan. To give you some context, I was working on a report and everything looked perfect with my dev data. So I hit deploy and sent the report over to QA. Easy, right? Except it was not. As soon as I landed in QA, half of my visuals broke because some of the data didn't even exist in that environment yet. To figure out what went wrong, I had to download the report back out of QA just to troubleshoot it. Suddenly, I was stuck maintaining two separate files of the exact same report. And I knew if I pushed it to production, I'd be managing three. Honestly, I refuse to live that life. No one has time to manage three versions of the same report just because the data sources are different. That's when I discovered parameterizing data sources. But right after I fixed that, I hit another roadblock. I had buttons on my report that linked to other reports in the same workspace. And turns out deployment pipelines do not automatically update those internal links. So if you're not careful, your QA users will click a link and get sent right back to your dev environment. And you guessed it, you can fix that with parameters too. It sounds like a lot, but once you set it up, it just works. Let's jump in and I'll show you how it's done. First things first, let's import some data. I'm selecting this Excel file, click open, select sheet 1, and transform data. This opens up Power Query. And this is our data set. Let's rename the query right away just to keep everything clean. I'm going to rename this as Scoville data. Now let's open up Advanced Editor, copy the source string. We're going to break this down and build our parameters. Click Manage Parameters, select New Parameter, name this as File Path. Set the type to text, suggested value to list of values, paste your source here. Let's get the last piece, cut it, and select your default value, select your current value, click OK. Now, let's build another parameter, name this one as env for environment, set the type to text, suggested values to list, paste the rest of the source code here, and from here, you can edit the list to add your other environments. Like this one's going to be QA, this one is going to be prod. Now select your default and current values and hit OK. Finally, go back to your advanced editor of our source data. We're going to edit the source by replacing the hard-coded text with our new parameters. We're using file path and env for environment. And that's it. This will now let us use parameters to switch our data sources. Now let's create a new query. This one is going to pull our file path and environment, which will be my first variables. This will be my source file path as text and my source environment as text. Those are the two parameters that I'm going to pull. Now let's get our source from our data set. Copy this And let's take it back to our query. Let's replace the source here. And build the result. The result will be our file path and the source environment. Let's hit done. And let's rename this query as get metadata, because that's what the query is doing. It's bringing out the source file path and the source environment, which is metadata. Now let's create another blank query. And this is referencing the metadata. We have the metadata, convert this into a table. This is our file path and environment. Now we only care about the environment here. So let's filter down to the column, just select environment, and there we have it. Now let's add a conditional column. We're going to call this environment because that's what it's going to hold. And the rules will be if the value contains dev, then the output should be dev. And if the value contains QA, we have QA. And the value contains prod, we want prod. And okay. Now let's rename this query as environment. Now let's hit close and apply. Let's give it some time for the queries to load. You'll see that there's a new table here called environment. And it has all of the items that we added. Now let's go check out how it looks. Looks exactly like we want. And going back to the report view, I see that my data is pointing to dev and it has 100 records. Now let's go do a quick parameter check and see if it's actually working. I'm in Power Query. Let's point this to QA and then close and apply. Give it a second to load. And okay, QA it is, and it has 162 records. Now let's try prod. Let's go to environment, switch my environment to prod. Close and apply. And give it a second to load. There we go, prod has 500 records. Perfect, the parameter is working. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Now let me add a quick link to the visual and we're ready to publish the report. I'm publishing to dev. Now let's go check the report over in the Power BI service. Let's navigate to the workspace and let's open up the report. Everything looks good. We're in dev. Now let's check out the link that we just added. When I click it, it should redirect straight to another report in the dev environment, which it's doing. That's perfect. Now to the exciting part. Let's create a deployment pipeline. Let's select new pipeline. Let's give it a name. I'm gonna call it demo. Let's go next. This is going to be dev. The next stage is going to be QA. And the last stage is going to be prod. And hit create and continue. Next, we need to assign a workspace. Let's start with dev. But wait, I don't see our workspace in the list. Let's go check. Okay, let's go to workspace settings. Let's go to workspace type. All right, let's upgrade that to premium. And I'll leave the storage format as selected and click save. Perfect. Now that it's upgraded, let's take a look at the list under dev. It's there. Perfect. Assigning. There's all of our information. And let's do that to QA. QA has a deployment rules icon that dev doesn't have. Looks like we can't assign rules yet because there's no content in the workspace. Okay. So let's deploy content from dev to QA. Select everything. Deploy. All right, it's always a good practice to add a note at each deployment to keep track of your changes. Now that the content is deployed, let's try those deployment rules again. Select the dataset and go to the parameter rules, click add rule, choose the value file path, and then choose environment. This one's going to be other and edit to QA. Perfect, save and close. Now, let's see. Let's go to settings of this dataset. And let's try to set our gateway connections. Gateway is fine. Let's configure the data source credentials. I'll leave the selections as is. Let's click sign in. Wait a second. Points to dev. Well, the important point here is we did two things. We deployed the content to QA and then we edited the connection settings. That means the first deployment didn't have the new settings to switch over to when the content actually moved. To fix this, all we have to do is deploy the content from dev to QA one more time. So let's do that. Let's go select everything and then let's deploy. And of course, add a note. Now let's go to settings and let's sign into the data source credentials one more time. And there we go, we're in QA now. That worked. Let's refresh the dataset and check the report. And there you go, we have QA. It's properly pointing to QA. Now let's go back and do the exact same thing for prod. Let's assign a workspace. Select sandbox, select that. Then we deploy everything that's in QA, select all, deploy, add a note. Now let's set up the deployment rules. Select the model, go to the parameter rules, set your file path and environment parameters. This one will be for prod. And save and close. Just like before, deploy from QA to prod one more time so all those parameters actually apply. Then go to settings configure your gateway, sign into the data source credentials, and yes, we are pointing to prod. That was successful. Let's refresh the data set, open up the report, and everything seems to be working well. But wait, let's go back and check QA. Let's go to the report and let's check on the link that we added. Just as I suspected, it's still pointing to dev, but we came from QA and this one's pointing to dev. Let's head back to Power Query and fix that. We're going to create a new data source to house our report links for each environment. To make this clean, I'm splitting the URL components into separate columns. We have prefix, the workspace ID, report ID, and page ID. The prefix usually stays the same for all the environments because we are in Power BI. So let's get that. Paste it over here, would be the same. Let's go back and get the workspace ID. The first piece would be the workspace ID. Let's get a report ID, which is over there. And let's get the page ID. And bring these over for all of the environments. And just like that, we have our links data set. Now let's make this data set dynamic so it automatically filters to the correct environment. First, we'll edit the query to reference our environment table. Then we'll extract that as a list and use it to filter our main links table. And click Done. Now your links table only shows the data for your currently selected environment. Once the queries load, let's take a look at our links table. Make sure to select the link column and set the data category to web URL. Go back to the report view, assign this new link to your visual, and then we're ready to save and publish. Let's check the report in the Power BI service. We're in dev, so clicking the link takes us straight to the dev report. No surprises there. Now let's go back to our deployment pipeline and deploy all of this to QA. Now let's configure the deployment rules, select the parameters, and select the list and go QA. Remember our trick? Deploy the QA one more time so the changes actually apply. Now let's click the link and okay, that's pointing to QA. That's what we want. We're in QA and the dashboard is in QA. Sorry, the report is in QA. Now let's do the exact thing with prod. Deploy the content from QA to prod. And let's assign the deployment rules. Save. And let's deploy one more time from QA to prod. Now let's refresh the datasets and let's check on the report. Well, the link goes straight to prod, and that's absolutely perfect. As a quick pro tip, if you ever want to review your past work, you can see your entire deployment history in a clean list right here. You can also select specific deployment stages to view the exact history and activity of what was moved when. And that's how you set up parameters to work with the deployment pipelines. And if you found this content helpful, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.